Have you ever wondered, what's the deal with the Nobel Prizes?
Who are all these people?
And why should I care?
I'm Maggie.
And I'm Quinn.
And this is Nobelus Oblige, the podcast where we rank and review all the Nobel laureates from 1901 until we run out of people.
Join us as we make our way through some of the most influential scientists, writers, and leaders of the 20th and 21st centuries.
In the process, we'll explore their work, their impact on society, their personal lives, and more.
And, most importantly, we'll see if they have that erudite mystique, that academic rigor, that sense of Nobelus Oblige.
Welcome to Ranking 76. We're ranking 76 heroes and villains of the American West. I'm Eric.
And I'm Matt.
And we just finished Meriwether Lewis. And today we're going to move on to Sacagawea, which might sound like a lot of rehash. And I'll be honest, it kind of is, but it's from a much different perspective. So there is a little bit.
It's
different.
From the perspective of a 15-year-old pregnant gal whose husband was a douche.
You're not far off. Charbonneau has had a, we'll say, interesting character development. Let's go with character development. Reputation is probably the best way to say it.
His name is Pierre S. Charboneau.
Toussaint, his son is Jean-Baptiste. I think you almost have
Jean-Baptiste.
Very snobbish.
I am from Le France.
He's actually from Mandan. Very North Dakota.
Don't you know we're gonna go? It's the winters up there, don't you know?
It's how do you do a French accent in like North Dakota, South Dakota accent?
Hey, don't you know? Oui, oui.
That's part Russian.
Voulez-vous français?
I don't know. That was very weird. I don't know how we would do it. Poor Jean-Baptiste is very confused on what nationality he is.
There's got to be more, going back to what you said about rehash. There's got to be more to her story since, by the time they finished the journey and got back, she was what, 16, 17?
Right. There is some debate, but we'll cross into that. But I did leave out a fair amount of information just in the Lewis, because honestly, there's a lot on the Corp of Discovery we didn't cover. Now, you would think it's only a trip to the ocean and back. How much is there? There's a lot of rehash because it really is the same journey, but you have so many different perspectives on it. Sacagawea is just one of them.
Remind me what tribe she's in or came from.
The Lemhi Shoshone. And then she was kidnapped, but let's go into that because honestly, there's not much on her, the early part of her life, but we'll see. Sacagawea may have been born in 1788. So that's how we're starting out.
I always love when we start out a figure by they may have been born with at may had been this time.
Yeah. It's kind of a pick your own adventure. So 1788. Yeah, pick a month. What do you want her birthday to be? Go ahead.
Let's say May 26th.
May 26th, 1788. Stamp it. Put it on her gravestone. She was born into a band of what will be called the Lemhi Shoshone. Lemhi is actually a Mormon name that they gave them, so that's going to come out later. But for our sake, they are the Lemhis. There is no confirmed birthplace, but she was born probably around the Continental Divide or modern-day Idaho. Like I said before, there's a criminally small amount of information on her life. Or the tribe she grows up with probably has something to do with they were constantly raided and murdered pretty much her entire childhood. So little is
What
known
a
about
fun
this tribe.
childhood.
Oh, it's just great. In fact, the earliest entry we can have on Sacagawea, where it talks about the early part of her life, it's actually Lewis's journal entry while they're on the trip. After they
That's
leave
the
Sacagawea.
earliest.
That is not the earliest mention of her, but that's as far back as we can go in her history without a lot of this may have happened, this kind of happened.
Wow.
So the first really documented moment of Sacagawea, of Lewis's journal entry, he writes, again, he's already met Sacagawea and they're actually near the North Dakota-Montana border. And he basically just points out, this is where she was taken, when he wrote, quote, "Our present camp precisely on the spot the Snake Indians were encamped at the time the Hidatsa of the Snipe River came in sight 5 years since. From hence they retreated about 3 miles up the Jefferson River and concealed themselves in the woods. The Hidatsa pursued, attacked them, killed 4 men, 4 women, and a number of boys, and made prisoner all the females of the 4 boys. Sacagawea, our Indian woman, was one of those prisoners taken at the time." That's kind of all we have on her childhood. Bleak.
Coming from a guy that didn't even get to see it.
Yeah, it's really just Sacagawea pops up when she just starts recognizing things. So for her to just point out, hey, this is possibly where my family was murdered and I was taken capture. Real fun moment for her, I'm sure. So as we were talking, Sacagawea would go on to describe to the captains that Sacagawea ran up the river as far as they could to get away from the Hidatsa, but eventually they do capture her, and she's kept in slavery for about a year. Again, not much is known what happens during that year, but she would have had to experience being in one of probably the poorest tribes in the country to the Hidatsa, which were one of the more wealthier tribes of the region. So there's this interesting little dichotomy of we were very poor, but even as a slave, she might have had nicer things. Now that's speculation, but that's kind of what we have to go off of at this point.
That's a very weird thought to
Right.
process.
I was born into poverty, but then this really rich family took care of me, so
But still kept me chained up.
right. But this is somehow better. Is this better? I don't know if this is better. Really weird for a 10-year-old to process. Living along the Knife River, the Hidatsas traded a lot with French-Canadian fur traders. One of those fur traders' name was Toussaint Charboneau, who was around the camp around this time. Charbonneau had been born in Montreal, Canada around 1767, and at a young age he started working at the Northwest Company, but more recently started working independent. Now there's debate on how he and Sacagawea met. Likely she was just exchanged, but there is the I guess hypothesis that she may have been won in a bet. But I also couldn't figure out what kind of bet it was, which makes me tend to think that maybe she was just, traded for some goods, which isn't better, or actually there's probably really no real difference.
That reminds me of Olive Oatman and her sister getting traded, bought, whatever, for 6 goats, 3 things of this, 5 things of that, 2 horses. It's weird that they used people as currency.
Right. And think of slavery. I mean, America does have quite a history with slavery, so you are thinking of them as property. They are quite literally a trade good. So yeah, I don't think you're far off there.
That's just, it's weird, I guess, now at times to think, to wrap your head around that.
Right. And even, I mean, think of Charbonneau, who is basically going to be gifted this young teenage girl. There's no good intentions there.
Right. And I was just going to say, I would be no.
Right. She doesn't have that option though.
I'm
She could
good.
say
Right. Well, that's just it. Like, she can't say no.
yeah, you're kind of just depending on I've I've likely just seen my family murdered. I've just been living in slavery. And now I hope this new guy, he's going to treat me well, but you don't know. And in fact, you're going up against a complete stranger who's not of your race, who doesn't speak anywhere near your language.
You can't communicate. Yeah.
So and she's, 11, 12 at this point. Like this is a girl.
Like you said, doesn't even know what's going on, really.
Right. Now, after being traded or given to Charbonneau, Charbonneau does take her on as a wife, and according to Hidatsa customs, he likely left a gift to be, I will say this in heavy quotes, married to the young woman.
Awful.
Yes. Yes, it is. Really uncomfortable is what it is. And then shortly she becomes pregnant, and this is where she starts meeting up with the Corp of Discovery.
Not 11 though.
No, there's a couple years. You're right. So there is a couple years that goes by where they're together. Charbonneau also has another wife that really isn't mentioned. So she has a name. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but yeah, this isn't the first time Charbonneau has a teenage wife.
So his other wife is also a teenager.
Also young.
Dude.
I don't think as young as Sacagawea, but I mean.
Well, and then who was like, yep, I'm going to get this 11-year-old girl and then make her my wife. That's weird.
Yes. Yes, it is. Literally trading a property for. So she went from property to your wife. At what point does she have a choice in this? And the answer is, well, she doesn't. So
yeah, like if she asked him to leave, he would say no.
Right. Well, that's just, you don't know because she doesn't speak your language. Maybe she doesn't like being with the Hidatsas. Maybe this is an improvement. So maybe we don't know. It's a real messed up situation is what it is. So now we're getting to the point where it's the winter of 1804 and the Corps of Discovery come up to the Mandan villages. Charbonneau is out on a hunt, but when he returns, he must have seen that men are building their winter quarters and asked to be introduced to them. He believes the expedition would be in need of an interpreter, and the enterprising Frenchman thought that he could at least be an asset.
So he saw dollar signs.
Essentially, yeah. You're going west. One of my wives actually is from out west. I wonder if they might have a need for us. Is exactly what he's thinking. He goes and makes an introduction to the two captains, Lewis and Clark, and says exactly that. I have a translator. Would you like us to come along? The captains accepted and told him that he could only take one of his wives. The wife he chooses is Sacagawea, which would make sense because, like we just talked about, she's going to like another language. She's from there. She's likely the only person who has seen the Rocky Mountains before, so she is obviously the pick. I'll be honest with you, I have no idea what happened to the other wife. Probably just stuck around the Mandan villages.
Just said, I'll stay here.
Yeah, I have no idea. Never looked, never occurred to me to look what happened to her. So I apologize for that. But what Sacagawea would do is she would complete the chain. So we talked about it pretty briefly in the Lewis and Clark in Lewis's episodes that Sacagawea would obviously be able to speak Hidatsa or Mandan or whatever language that they needed. She would then speak to Charbonneau, who would translate that into French, who would speak to George Drouillard, who would then translate that into English for Lewis and Clark to talk. That was the most efficient way to do it outside of sign language, which is a lot to put on pressure for a 15-year-old girl who right now is very pregnant.
And okay, so how does he communicate to her right now?
I mean, he's lived with her for about 2 or 3 years, so he's
found a way. I just didn't know, like, He's like, okay, so she's with this his other wife for 2 years, and then all of a sudden it's just like, all right, say goodbye to her.
So he
Be
is
gone, you.
Yeah, I don't know what happens. That's another part that makes you feel icky that you don't want to talk about. But as far as Sacagawea is concerned, so she is Shoshone. She has been in captivity for a couple years with the Hidatsa. Charbonneau has been an independent trader or just a trader for a number of years. So he's been interacting with these tribes. And as much as there is a difference between the languages, it's kind of like how, what's a good way to explain it? So you know how like people from Spain speak a different type of Spanish than people from Mexico.
Yep.
Kind of the same thing. Like eventually they evolve, and that's how they're able to communicate.
Okay.
So like there's words here and there that are different, pronounced different, that would cause obviously some issues. But
And I guess if he was trading with the people that had her, he probably already had some form of
yes,
knowledge.
he knows how to speak with them. Like he would be able to communicate in that language.
I didn't think of it. I didn't think of it like that because she was with that group for 3-4 years, right?
Yeah,
So,
she was with them for a couple of years before she got. Actually, I think she was only with them for about a year or so for Charbonneau. But yes,
okay.
Throughout the winter through Fort Mandan through 1804 to 1805, the captains never really wrote down what Sacagawea looked like. So, pretty much a mystery. I know a couple years ago there was a coin of Sacagawea.
The dollar coin.
The dollar coin. Yeah, we don't really know what she looks like. So, they would comment that her skin was lighter than Charbonneau's other wife, but that's not particularly helpful. And they would say that she was small in stature. And when you think that the Corp of Discovery's purpose is to discover and write everything down in detail, obviously they're writing everything else down that just never occurred to them that maybe they would want to write the description of a very important translator that they're going to need. So it just never really happened. I guess to them, it didn't matter either because they just needed to get to the ocean and back. Who cares what everyone looks like? It's not like Sacagawea is the only one that doesn't get described. They just didn't describe any of the men and what they look like. So why would she be any different? There's really only one other mention, that by John Ordway that winter, saying that when she came to visit them with a couple of buffalo robes on January 20th, he would write that Sacagawea fell ill, and Clark ordered York to give her some stewed fruit and tea. York, of course, being Clark's slave. Considering she is about to give birth less than a month later, you could probably assume the sickness was due to her pregnancy. In February 1805, Lewis is the one that is going to deliver Sacagawea's child. Quote, "This was the first child of which the woman was born, and it was common in such cases that her labor was tedious and pain and violent." And yeah, I believe that. A very young girl giving birth in the middle of a North Dakota winter. Yeah, I bet it was pretty miserable and hard.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. It's gonna hurt.
This ain't gonna.
I don't know. This might be the first baby I delivered. Oh, have you been outside? It's freezing.
It's -20 outside. You're not kidding. This has to be the first.
What did he walk into the room and go, "Whoa, it's a little nippy outside." Yeah, my hands are a little cold.
Oh. I just shuddered a little bit. Oh, I'm so horrified.
Well, I mean, jeepers. It's like, Captain Obvious, please come to the front.
Right. Well, also, obviously, giving birth, I'm male. I'll never experience what it's like. But can you imagine when you're that young and here's this dude you met a couple months before and it's probably like rolling up his sleeves like, well, let's give this a shot. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, just rolling up the old sleeves. How hard can it be, right?
I mean, I've seen cows do this. I just don't know. Yeah,
got no antiseptic.
Nope. I don't think they gave her rum, so she just had to deal with it.
Oh my well, yeah, she's too freaking young.
Yeah, she is. So obviously, with this really painful labor that Sacagawea is in, Lewis, unsurprisingly, doesn't know what to do. You kind of get the point that he's just kind of staring at her like, I don't know. Have you tried pushing? Like, what do you expect me to do?
Oh, I thought you had an ulcer. I don't know.
Lewis starts then speaking with an interpreter named Jejume, who says that he should administer a small portion of a rattle from a rattlesnake that you're just going to crush up and you're going to make some type of small potion, put it into water, and then she's going to drink it. Now, Lewis would then say, quote, well, the medicine was, whether the medicine was truly the cause or not, I shall not undertake to determine, but she had not taken more than 10 minutes before she came forth. This remedy may be worthy of future experiments, but I must confess that I want faith in its efficacy. She may have been able to give birth after having this nasty mixture of a rattlesnake skin and water.
Yeah, it probably tasted so bad. She was just like, my stomach.
Oh, please don't give it. At least they didn't give her a Rush's Thunderbolt, because that was probably next on the list.
Oh, can you imagine just freaking crap everywhere?
I don't want to imagine it.
Thunderbolt. What's it called? Rush's Thunderbolt, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Rush's Thunderbolt, the laxative. And
ladies and gentlemen, we all know what Rush's Thunderbolt is.
It's it's not great. It's incredible that Sacagawea wanted to come along after this, because I'm sure she thought everyone was an idiot after. But anyway, she gives birth to a baby boy named Jean-Baptiste Charbonneau, named after Charbonneau's father.
Jean-Baptiste.
Which is a pretty slick name, pretty sly. I think we can all agree that he had like sunglasses coming out, probably throwing up rattlesnake water, but that's, not the worst. He would be given the nickname Pomp or Little Pompey, and he was also going to come along on the expedition. But now it's starting to get time to get serious, because Charbonneau, it's time to negotiate the contract. And we did talk about this in Lewis's episode, but just to recap, he understands how important Sacagawea is to this trip, and Charbonneau really wants to dictate his own terms. The captain said that he would have to work as an equal with all the other men, and Charbonneau was like,
nah, good, brah.
Nah, that doesn't work for me.
About that. What was his deal? Like, he would just chill, right? The whole time?
Essentially. He didn't need to keep guard. He didn't need to have the same rules as the other men. He was just coming along. He was going to do his thing, which, honestly, it's a good opening offer.
I mean, hey, what's the worst they could say, right? No.
And they did. They sure did say no.
Well, I tried, right?
They politely asked him to leave, and they would find someone else who can speak. Because keep in mind, they're surrounded by natives who probably could figure out the language. He's not the only person that they have an option. He's obviously, Sacagawea is who they really want, because they're going to have to go meet that tribe.
But she's not the end all be all.
No, she's not. Well, it would be, I think if they had the chance to just take Sacagawea and not Charbonneau, I think they would have done it. And I don't think they would have thought about it.
Before he did all the stupid stuff? Did they not like him straight from the start?
Well, that's the debate, because Lewis, I don't know if Lewis doesn't like him now. I suspect he just never liked him. Lewis was not a fan. Clark actually has a pretty good friendship with both Charbonneau and Sacagawea.
But Clark also spent a heck of a lot more time.
Well, they tented together. Like, this is really like this fivesome, I guess. So between Lewis, Clark, Sacagawea, Charbonneau, and now the child Jean Baptiste, they did tent together. Like, they spent a lot of time together. It's just you kind of get the feeling that Lewis was really annoyed by Charbonneau, and Clark was an actual friend.
Well, he's also, yeah. But I mean, he did, to be fair, he almost ruined some stuff a couple times.
We're not there yet. We're
I
almost
know,
there.
I know. I was gonna say we haven't got quite there yet, but
right now, Charbonneau is probably thinking he's a real smooth negotiator, and is right now outside the camp. And actually, Charbonneau is starting to pack up, thinking he completely blew it. But just as he moves all of his possessions across the river away from the expedition, let's just give it one more shot. And he comes over and he says that he's sorry and to, quote, excuse his simplicity. And just kind of, I won't say begs to come along on the expedition, but could you please reconsider your offer? Charbonneau pretty much eats everything that he said. He will work just like the other men. He will keep watch. Everything. He is an equal among the men. He is no better, no worse. And then the captains agree to keep him on. The expedition then spends the next couple of weeks digging out 6 canoes, and they make 3 foot wide out of some cottonwood trees, along with the pirogues. Now, I think when I described the pirogues in Lewis's episodes, I described them as a big canoe, which they are, but they are more like they have a sail, if that makes sense. So a canoe with a sail. So you got to picture, just scale that up a little bit, just so that the next little bit that Matt alluded to makes a little bit more sense.
canoe with a sail.
Canoe with a sail. Big canoe with a sail. On April 7th, they send the big keel boat, so they no longer have to take their pointy sticks and put it in the ground. They send that keel boat right back to St. Louis, where they never have to see it again. Sacagawea and Charbonneau travel up the rest with the 33-man party the first night, where they stop up and they make a tent out of buffalo skins. Quote, tied Indian fashion, 10 or 20 poles with Lewis, Clark, George Drouillard, Toussaint, Sacagawea, and Jean Baptiste. They all camp together for the night. Jean Baptiste is only 2 months old. Real young baby.
Crazy to me.
To take a child in uncharted
Hey, let's go to uncharted territory. It can barely open his eyes.
Family friendly. There's only 5,000 grizzly bears. And mosquitoes, and yeah, it's really dangerous. It probably shouldn't take in a child there, but it's not like Sacagawea was going to leave him behind. And it's not like Sacagawea had really much of a choice, if we're being honest here. Sacagawea would then become more gatherer, depending on what source you use. And there's one source I really didn't enjoy when I was making this episode, to the point where I finished the book because it wasn't very long, but it was a real struggle, because the guy who wrote the book was really pro Charbonneau. The man liked himself some Toussaint, and he really wanted to diminish what Sacagawea meant. So Charbonneau's great cook, great guy. Let's have a beer with him. And Sacagawea was just kind of the campy teenager who was only helpful, I don't know, once or twice. So that's what you're kind of battling. But initially, to start off with, Sacagawea is gathering up all of these roots that the men don't really know about, that she is quite fond of. But anyway, when she would gather, she would say, they would, quote, when we halted for dinner, the squaw busied herself in searching for artichokes, which the mice collected and deposited in large hordes. This operation she performed by penetrating the earth with a sharp stick until about small collections of driftwood. Her labor soon bore successful, as she procured a good quantity of these roots. So that's kind of her daily routine. She's not really expected to hunt. That's just what she's doing because she has a child to take care of.
Right. I mean, that's her first priority.
Right.
But she's still doing stuff to help out.
Yes. She is less guide, though. So I know we talk about her being the guide. This is the area she's kind of familiar with. But let's be honest, Lewis and Clark are the ones really guiding this. Like, they're the ones that are figuring out where to go. And honestly, their tour right now, it's just to follow the Missouri River to its source. Like, we're at that point. They just left the Mandans, uncharted territory, but they're just following the river. So there's really not much reason or much purpose for Sacagawea on what she recognizes just quite yet. When they're not in the canoe going up the river, Charbonneau and Sacagawea would be seen walking by Clark. Charbonneau developed a close friendship with Clark that we talked about that would last literally until their dying days. Clark was also fond of Sacagawea, who he nicknamed Janie, and as we said before, Jean-Baptiste, who was nicknamed Pomp. Lewis, on the other hand, was, not glowing. Perhaps it has something to do with that on April 13th, Charbonneau almost flipped a pirogue for the first time. Now, we talked briefly about the second time.
The first time.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about before that most of the important objects in the expedition were transferred on the pirogue. Lewis believed that one pirogue, which was labeled the White Pirogue, was safer than the other two. Have no idea what the distinction was. Lewis probably just, I don't know, did eeny, meeny, miny, mo, that one's safer. Maybe the other one had a big hole in the bottom of it. I don't know, but the white one was safer. It was easier to steer, so that's where they kept all of the really important things. Now, thankfully, the important things they considered, Sacagawea and her child. So they're on the safe pirogue. Yeah. Life is important. Hip, hip.
Imagine.
The downside is, if you're going to have Sacagawea and Jean-Baptiste on the safe pirogue, you're going to have Charbonneau on that same boat. Well, if Charbonneau is equal to all of the other men, he's going to have to drive it from time to time.
Hey, he's one of the crew.
He is. It should be noted, Charbonneau was born in Montreal, has lived on the Great Plains for a good chunk of his life. Not much water there, eh? Not too much to sail around. So Charbonneau might not be the best sailor. I mean, I'm sure he was great at a lot of things. In fact, he was a really good cook. Such a good cook. He was the opposite of a sailor. To give you an idea of how bad of a sailor he was, he couldn't swim.
Hey, so we want to go on an expedition that's mainly on water. Done. I'm your guy. Can you explain to me what water is? How deep we talking?
Monsieur, I do not understand. What is this water?
And he has to drive, and he has to steer. Oh no!
I don't want to say this problem could have been being saw from a mile away, but I think when they negotiated that Charbonneau was one of the men, Lewis put him behind the rudder and was like, I'm sticking to this decision. We're not double thinking it. And then, hey, let's just go on because we haven't actually talked about what actually happened. But, yeah. So on April 13th, they were gliding around with the wind in their favor. Hip, hip, hooray. That doesn't happen a whole lot. So they actually have the wind going against the current, and that's pushing them down. And then Charbonneau takes control of the rudder. They are about 200 yards offshore when a sudden squall of wind surprises him. and the pirogue turned completely on its side, and a panicking Charbonneau steered the sail into the wind so violently that the boat itself nearly overturned. What's on that boat? Just his wife and newborn baby. That's fine. George Drouillard is able to actually save Charbonneau, and he grabs the rudder and stops it from tipping it over. So thank God for George Drouillard also on that canoe. Now, they would then make it a practice to not let the Frenchmen anywhere near the rudder for a couple of weeks. Because Lewis, after this event, described him as, quote, perhaps the most timid waterman in the world. And you know what? Fair. He is a tradesman. He is a frontiersman. He's not a sailor. We all have our strengths. His wasn't sailing. It's fine.
On the sailing journey. On the sailing journey. But go on.
Are you saying that this might happen again? Have we alluded to this a lot?
I don't know if you know this.
So as we talked in Lewis's episode, on May 14th, 1805, again, they're traveling along and Lewis is walking on shore, which is pretty typical for him. Charboneau and Sacagawea, among the other men, are guiding the pirogues. Where again, Charboneau is at the wheel, and you got to think, for him to get the rudder again, it had to have been like a really calm, peaceful day. Like, they had to have think only an idiot could mess this up, right? Nothing's gone wrong.
Only an idiot.
Maybe even Charbonneau just thought, hey guys, you know what? I screwed up last month. That's my bad.
I've learned. I swear I've learned.
But I think I can do it. Because I remember when I was like 8 years old, I really wanted to drive my grandmother's golf cart because it was the coolest thing in the world. And about 10 seconds after my grandmother let me drive that golf cart, I may have driven it into a tree. But we're going to pretend Charbonneau's ready up for the challenge. And almost predictably, another sudden squall takes Charbonneau by surprise. Now, the more experienced sailors would have put the vessel into the wind, but Charbonneau, I don't know, either just kicked the thing or it sounds like he just started panicking and he started crying to whatever god that he prayed to.
Oh, please, let it save me, please.
It's almost like it was a hot stove and he was not going to touch this. What do I do? Will it fix itself? Will it do itself? Oh God. It's not.
Don't know.
I don't know.
Hands off. I don't know. I can't break it if I'm not touching it.
Maybe he thought this was a Tesla that could drive itself. Maybe. No, we're not.
I tied a string around the steer. Thank you. Looking for the word. I tied a string around the rudder. Is that not what you're supposed to do when you want to take a nap?
Ooh, that would be juicy if he was taking a nap. You got to think Sacagawea is like rolling her eyes or like, hey guys, we don't want him steering this. Like, are we sure? I have a small child. I have more skin in this game if this flips. So anyway, the boat is near sinking. Charbonneau was panicking, and the captains, in order to get the attention of the crew, i.e., and when I say the crew, I really mean Charbonneau, the captains are firing their rifles at the crew. I think Lewis was just aiming at Charbonneau, like, you know what? It can't get worse. Let's just kill him.
We were trying to warn you, and I accidentally shot him. I don't know.
Oops. Sorry. I guess that's the second person killed that's died on this trip, but we don't need to talk about this one. If it wasn't for Pierre Crozat, who was also on board, shouting at Charbonneau to the point where he literally threatened to kill him.
I mean, there you go. He was shooting him.
Yeah, but Charbonneau or Crozat is much closer than Lewis on the shore. Keep in mind, also Lewis, we talked about in his episode. He's already throwing stuff on the ground. He's ready to swim out. They're like 300 yards away. So honestly, there's nothing Lewis can do. It's Crozat or the bottom of the Missouri River. So Crozat threatened the life of Charbonneau. And after about 30 seconds, and yes, all of this happened within 30 seconds, where you actually see, like, apparently the sail of the boat is literally skipping across the water.
Oh my God.
Just a pure panic. Once Crozat gets Charbonneau to calm down, then he's able to steer the rudder away into the wind so the sail picks the boat out of the water. And then they just kind of, I don't want to say crawl back to the shore, but it was described that the boat was more underwater than it was above water. Now, Sacagawea during this whole time, again, has a child either in her arms or in a basket on her back. She's not only protecting this 3-month-old child, she's also noticing, hey, that looks like an important book that's floating away. Why don't I grab that? Oh, here's another important book. Let's grab that. If it wasn't for Sacagawea, the journals would have been lost.
And their entire trip would have been
the first 3 months,
over.
Because remember, they made copies, they sent that back to Jefferson,
Right.
that went back to the keel boat.
Yep.
But from the Mandans to this point, they would have been lost.
Right, and that's like a ton of information.
Yeah. If you think you're annoyed when you lose one work document, imagine losing 3 months worth of work because someone wanted to sink your boat.
A guy that didn't know how to drive or steer.
Right. Yeah. Now, they're running out of Missouri River eventually. It's still a ways off, but I didn't look this up, but I'm pretty confident that Charbonneau never drove the pirogue again.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Absolutely not.
In which case, I have a conspiracy theory that Charbonneau did it on purpose so he wouldn't need to drive. Maybe if I just prove I am an absolute inept idiot, maybe I won't need to do anything. Except cook. Because apparently, really good cook.
Oh, of course.
Probably a pretty good tracker. Just he's not a salesman. he's not a sailor, which is fine. But he almost ruined the expedition. A very grateful Lewis would write of Sacagawea, quote, "The Indian woman to whom I've ascribed equals fortitude resolutions with any person on board at the time of the accident. Caught and preserved most of the light articles of which were washed overboard." End quote. That night, Lewis handed out a 1/4 pint of whiskey, probably because everyone really needed a drink after that day. Other than some wet books and some spoiled medicine, the knowledge of the expedition was saved, and 6 days later, they named a river after Sacagawea. Probably like side-eyeing Charbonneau this entire time.
Lewis probably wept like, thank you so much. Thank you so much. He whispered in her ear, I tried to shoot him.
Why you missed? Why didn't you kill him?
We had our chance.
That's really what. Oh my God, this is a mystery novel. Someone write that alternative history.
Did you and I just uncover the greatest conspiracy of the Western? Oh my God.
The Corp of Discovery, Sacagawea and Lewis were out to kill Charbonneau. Yes, because the idea was hatched from the first time. Everyone's got to think the idiot's going to do it again.
Right. Yeah.
Lewis.
Oh, why else would they let him drive again? But no.
I think we've cracked it. They both wanted him dead.
Any conspiracy theorists out there, hit us up.
The biggest news since JFK. Just kidding. You JFK people are crazy.
Oh, nice save.
I mean, did you hear, this is a sidebar, did you hear that they were going to release a bunch of JFK documents about a year ago and Biden pushed it back?
Did they really?
Yeah.
Dude, what if all the conspiracy theorists are right? That would be
Oh,
hysterical.
you have a lot of men in basements right now wringing their hands.
You have a lot of what in basements?
A lot of weird men in their basements wringing their hands.
Oh man, you crack me up. Woo.
Anyway, back to Sacagawea. Weird conspiracy theories aside. 3 days later, on May 17th, they are camping, and by they, I mean the captain, Charbonneau, Sacagawea, and Pomp are all in the same tent when they're woken up by the guard on duty saying that quite literally the tree above their heads was on fire. That's an alarm clock. In just moments, they were outside of the tent, and as soon as they were outside, quote, a few minutes later, we should have been crushed to atoms. They were almost crushed by a tree that was caught on fire.
Oh my gosh. So many things could have
There were so many incidences. And there's first off, if anyone ever gets the opportunity, like to read or to listen to the journals, I know LibriVox, somebody actually read all 120 hours worth of the journals. It's massive. There are so many of these stories that I encourage you to go listen or read them because they're outstanding primary sources. Like they read like a novel. But yes, there's so many of these that when you list off, they could have just been crushed by a burning branch that fell on them. It's incredible. Only one person died. Over a month later, on June 10th, Lewis is scouting ahead when he's trying to find the Great Falls when Sacagawea becomes sick with a high fever and severe pain in her lower abdomen. Now, do you remember what happened in this part of the story with Lewis? What Clark's remedy was?
shing.
You're not far off. Yeah, he bled her. He cut her. He bled her. Seems like he bled her an awful lot to the point where she was twitching.
That tells me she almost died.
Yeah.
Sure,
Keep in
she's
mind,
twitching. Keep her bleeding.
keep bleeding. Oh, by the way, where's that pain coming from? Her abdomen. What medicine do we have on board that would deal with any type of abdominal I can't say that, stomach pain? What could they possibly give her?
Bring on the thunder. Thunder.
They brought the thunder to
So
this
you're
woman.
telling me they bled her dry and on top of that gave her a diuretic.
Yep.
You know, that makes sense. I would totally think that would be my next.
Medicine's come a long way, hasn't it?
Good Lord.
You will be surprised to know that over the next 3 days, she gets much worse. Clark would describe her conditions as excessively bad, and then would continue that her condition was somewhat dangerous. Then probably bled her again. Actually, that's not true because then he actually prescribes her some Peruvian bark and laudanum. Do you know what laudanum is?
It is opium, isn't it?
Yeah, it's opium. So, bled, diuretic, and now narcotics. They're trying to kill this woman. They just don't know it yet. On June 16th, Sacagawea refused all medicines until Charbonneau persuaded to take something. But whatever Charbonneau wanted her to take, Clark wasn't impressed because Clark would even write, quote, if she dies, it will be the fault of her husband, as I am now convinced. But again, he doesn't say why.
What happened? What happened?
To me, this sounds like Charbonneau was like, what you're doing clearly is wrong. Like You got to think he cares for this woman, mother of his child. He probably was just giving her food because she needed food because she had literally no resources in her body anymore.
Right.
So it's easy to poke fun at Charbonneau, but at this point it's like, yeah, my wife is dying and I think you're doing it. So I'm just going to feed her. Thank you. So soon after Clark writes that in his journal, this is actually the part of the storyline where Lewis goes up front to find the Great Falls. Do you remember that part of the story?
Yeah. And he says they're back.
Yep. So Clark and Lewis now just do that effective tag team. Clark is going to go figure out how to ford across, and then Lewis is going to figure out basically how to nurse Sacagawea back up to health.
And he did in like a few days or something, right?
Yeah, because he stopped bleeding her, which was the absolute best thing to do. And then they actually found a mineral spring that she's able to drink out of, which after losing that much blood, yeah, you probably needed some minerals back in your body.
Oh, yeah.
But even he talks about the same complaints Clark did, because there's a part where Sacagawea starts getting better. She apparently had a very strict diet that Lewis wanted her to follow. And then Sacagawea was actually walking around camp. Everything's doing better. And then her and Charbonneau went out gathering food. She ate some food and then she got sick again. So then it all came back onto Charbonneau again, as in, why did you let her eat? I guess they were very frustrated with Charbonneau.
He is an interesting cat.
He's somewhere between caring husband. How do I want to say this? Caring husband. Do I want to say pedophile? Because I feel like pedophile probably fits. And bumbling idiot.
Definitely on the bumbling idiot side.
Yeah. After a few more days, Sacagawea starts feeling better again. She's actually walking out with the men again. They're going on. And by June 29th, she has recovered. The expedition is camping near the river. And again, this is the point where the expedition is like really hating their life for the first time. We're not at the Rockies yet, but we are basically stepping on rocky soil, prickly pears. This is where they're repairing their moccasins every other day. We're at that point in the expedition. So they're traveling along. They go hunting when York just notices this really large black storm cloud just off in the distance. They make note of it, think, you know what? We've dealt with rainstorms before. Rainstorms, we can deal with this one. But they're going to go find some type of protection because this does look like a bad storm that's coming through. In order to get protection for the elements, Clark spots a, quote, deep gully above the falls. They would have some shelter from overhanging rocks on the upper side to protect them. They were safe enough to even put down their guns. And then it started to rain. Light at first, but then Clark would describe it as, quote, the rain fell like one volley of water. Seems like it was a downpour in a hurry. And keep in mind, they're in a gully. They're on lowland above a waterfall, if that made any sense. Thinking they had better get out of there because they start seeing a mixture of mud and water rushing towards them from above. They have just enough time to reach their rifles and ammunition as the water gets up to their waist. This was sudden.
So they picked the wrong spot to hide from the rain.
It seemed like a good idea to hide in a gully until it was like a torrential downpour. Sacagawea has just enough time to pick up her son and to carry him, who is literally naked, as his cradle is being swept away by the tide. So Clark has his rifle in his left hand, and in his right hand, he is helping Charbonneau and Sacagawea up. Clark described Charbonneau as, quote, much scared and without nearly motion. So again, Charbonneau, in the face of danger, is letting everyone down at the worst possible moment.
Again.
And again, here, and I know we said this a lot to the point where it's probably a drinking game at this point, but the teenage mother is calmly holding her child and going up the ridge.
I just right when you were saying that, I could picture him just running around freaking out, and her face is just like the stern, like, why is this my life? What? Why is this guy the father of my child? You know what face I'm talking about. They're just as you're getting just a torrential downpour, you're soaked from head to toe. You hate life, and then you just look around at your significant other and you say to yourself, God, that guy's an idiot.
Do you think that if this was the Lion King and Charbonneau was playing Mufasa and Sacagawea was playing Scar?
No, Sacagawea would play Simba throwing. The story's changed. Throwing Mufasa into the.
Get rid of him. Actually, who's the mother? Who's the mother lion? Nala? No, that's
that's Simba's wife. I can't. I don't know if it ever says her name.
I have no idea. But anyway, people know what we're talking about. The mother of Simba killing Mufasa because he's a complete moron who panics under pressure.
Sliding a couple animals to Scar. Take care of it.
Please, Stampede.
And in this story, Scar is Lewis. The plot thickens again.
Only in this horror story, Charbonneau survives. He is a man who cannot be killed. As they're escaping up the ridge, the water soon covers 15 feet deep where they were. Had they have been just a couple minutes later, they would have been swept away, and they were a quarter mile away from a 90-foot fall. They would have all been dead.
All because of Clark.
Yeah, he picked a gully. He picked the wrong time to go into a gully. So they get past the Great Falls, and Lewis now has his eyes on those Rocky Mountains that appear to be getting bigger, but they didn't seem to be getting closer. Quote, the mountains, they still continued high and seemed to rise above places like an amphitheater, one rank above another as they recede until the river, until the most distant and lofty tops are clad in snow. He's now starting to realize these Rocky Mountains,
they big boys.
They're big boys. We got to go find these Shoshones like right now. So that's what they do. They book it as fast as they can. And again, this is the part of the story where it's getting late quick. They decide that Clark will lead an advanced scout party. But before he goes, what was the magical word he asked Sacagawea for?
Tababone.
Tababone. Which he asked for the word for white men or friend. And Sacagawea apparently looked at him all confused and was like, I don't know, Tababone, which more or less meant stranger, or even worse, can be translated into enemy. Whoopsie.
My bad.
The party make good progress, and Sacagawea gives them good news as they start approaching the Three Forks of the Missouri River in modern-day Montana, when she recognizes what is called, by her people, the Beaver's Head. So, awesome. We just completely skipped the part where they had that big debate over which part of the Missouri River they needed to take. Well, this is proof that they're on the right course, because Sacagawea is starting to recognize stuff. This is what's really important. This is why she's here, to make sure that they're on the right track. So Clark goes ahead, Tababone in hand, and he doesn't really find anyone, so he ends up coming back. Now it's Lewis's turn to go shout Tababone at strangers, and he has a little bit more luck. But, and this has never been explained to me or to anyone, why they didn't take Sacagawea, I will never understand.
I think we mentioned it in Lewis's episode. Like, the only one that can speak the language. No, you stay behind. We'll call for you when we want. Maybe it was the baby. They didn't want to take her and the baby just in case, or who knows? We'll never know.
That's what I was thinking too, but at the same time,
Oh no, because the baby in Sacagawea would have showed them they were not
a war party.
right from the beginning.
Yeah. Now maybe they thought she would slow them down, but at the same point, you just took her across country. This is where you need her. To leave her behind is just stupid. It's real dumb. They don't make a lot of mess ups on the court on the
Well,
expedition.
unless her husband said he had to go too, and they were like, "Never mind, we'll take our chances."
That's probably true. The idiot factor of Charbonneau probably does come into it a little bit. So anyway, Sacagawea stays with the main body of the expedition as they drudge through the Missouri River. The men have become fatigued wading through the river waters and are now becoming more and more tired every day. On August 15th, Clark wrote, quote, "The men complain much of their fatigue and being repeatedly in the water, which weakens them as much, particularly as they are obliged to live on poor deer meat, which is a regular bitter taste." Basically, the men are just complaining a lot.
Right.
They still have food to eat, but apparently the deer in this area were eating literal bitter roots, which gave their meat a bit of a bitter aftertaste, we'll say, and they're not happy about it. They just passed the Great Falls. They're kind of cranky.
The deer's like, "Geez, sorry. Next time you kill and eat me, I'll eat something a little more sweet for you."
Yeah. What you got to think, if the deers are talking to them like, "So you don't like the way we taste? Okay, I'm just going to eat more of it. Don't eat me." Like, go
Right.
fine. It's not my problem to feed you.
Right.
Bitter taste being aside, the deer is starting to look, I don't know, a little bit better because now food is starting to become a little bit, I don't know, less plentiful. So now they do need to rely on those roots that Sacagawea would like to dig up. And because she knew the area, she would be very helpful on which one of these are poisonous, which one of these are nutritious, things like that. So that's what she's doing as Lewis is trying to scare the Shoshones by screaming Tababone. It had been several days without contact with Lewis when, in the third week of August, the expedition were literally starting to walk ahead. So they just get to the end of the Missouri River. So, like, this is also where Lewis finds the Continental Divide. The nature laughs at him for a while, and then he continues on. So we're at that point. That's where the expedition is now. They're done with the Missouri River. They're starting to walk, and now they see, I believe it was Drouillard. Yes, George Drouillard is accompanied by two Shoshone warriors. Sacagawea, carrying little Pomp, when she saw the two warriors, starts dancing. And when she turned around to Clark, in sign language, she very excitingly said, "My people." You can only imagine how big of a boost of morale that had to have given the men for Sacagawea to not only say, "I don't just recognize this landmark, I don't recognize this type of vegetable. Those are my people."
I
Like,
remember them.
yes, they're mine. They're escorted back to the village when a group of women, including a friend Sacagawea believed was killed in the same raid that Sacagawea was taken captured in, they reunite. And they cry, and they have cugs, and there's kisses, and there's all of that good mojo's coming. Sacagawea then starts really doing the meat and potatoes of why she's here. She starts doing the translation chain between Charbonneau and then to Drouillard and then to Lewis and Clark, so on and so forth. Just as that is beginning, Stephen Ambrose writes, quote, "Scarcely had become the cumbersome process when Sacagawea began to stare at Kamehameha Suddenly recognizing him, her brother, she jumped up and ran and embraced him, threw her blanket over him, and cried profusely. Biggest coincidence in American history. I don't care what anyone says. To find her long lost brother at a crucial point in the expedition.
I don't know. Olive Oatman's brother finding her was pretty crazy.
Well, like there they had newspapers, like they had resources to come find her because I forget Olive's brother. I want to say Joe. I don't think it's Joe. But when he he survived and he was able to say that Olive was still alive. Sacagawea didn't have that.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
So to just blindly come in and yet her brother rises to a position of power, he had to believe she was dead. Because honestly, her parents were dead. She just assumed her brother would be dead also. And yet here they are. Brother and sister are finally reunited.
Reunited and it feels so good.
Quite literally. Negotiations suddenly just got easier, and the expedition and the Shoshone open up talks for the couple days. They come to terms. Everything's good. The expedition is going to wait a couple days, and they're going to go on. When Lewis becomes incredibly annoyed by Charbonneau, probably not the biggest newsflash to anyone, but why is he so annoyed at Charbonneau? Well, it turns out Sacagawea was talking to someone from the Shoshones earlier that morning, and they mentioned that Kamehameha was actually planning on taking the horses that they just negotiated for. Kamehameha was going to go on a hunting trip back east, effectively abandoning the Corp of Discovery when they absolutely couldn't leave. Sacagawea came exact from that conversation to Charbonneau, and Charbonneau just kind of sat on that information for a couple of hours. He told them that day, but he wasn't exactly in a hurry to tell them either.
Oh, hey, before I forget, I heard something the other couple hours ago.
Hey, it was really important. What was it? Oh, those incredibly important horses that are life and death for us. They want to take those out for a hunting trip. Does that sound good? So yeah, glad I told you that. So anyway, putting his annoyance to Charbonneau aside, Lewis immediately sends out and talks to Kamehameha, along with two other chiefs, and requests that they smoke a peace pipe together. Lewis asked, and now again, Lewis doesn't directly go in guns blazing to Kamehameha. He takes the calm, we'll call it the guilt trip approach. Lewis asked the Shoshone if they were men of their words, which I'm sure out of the blue gave zero clue of why they were there. The Shoshone suspected the captain knew that they were about to leave, said that the hunting trip, the two other chiefs that were sitting with Kamehameha and Lewis, kind of realize they know exactly what Lewis is talking about, and they instantly point the finger at Kamehameha. It was his idea. We wanted to help you guys, but Kamehameha is the one that didn't want. He was going to take it. It was all his fault. Kamehameha bowed his head and said that he knew it was wrong, but due to his scarce game over the summer, his people were hungry, and it was his responsibility as chief to take care of his people. However, he did tell them that he would keep his word and the expedition, and they would help the expedition across the mountains with the horses. So that's great. Which, to Kamehameha, it's a fair argument. But you got to think, maybe don't promise you're going to trade with these men and then abandon them.
And then abandon it instantly.
Yeah, not the best look. But he does renege. Get to another point of the expedition where it's like, this could have went horribly wrong. Like there's a lot of peaks and valleys in this story. Now the captains probably should have taken that as an omen, because if Kamehameha is already saying that game is scarce, they're now about to go into the mountains, And if you remember, this is where it gets really tough on the expedition. But they go up into the mountains anyway. They start crossing the Bitterroot Mountains, and Lewis wrote on the journey, quote, "Through thickets of which we were obliged to cut a road over rocky hillsides where our horses were perpetual danger of slipping to the train and the disruption up and down the steep hills. With the greatest difficulty and risk, we made 7.5 miles for this day." Really slow moving for walking even. Going into the mountains was dangerous as they struggled over the steep hillsides, like we just said. 7 horses died.
Holy crap. Well, Kamehameha's not going to be too happy about that.
Well, he did trade them, so they're kind of the expedition's problem now. But yeah, if the horses aren't able to make it,
Are they?
yeah, I think that's the question. When the horses are unable to climb, the men have to carry the load up the hill themselves. On September 4th, the men wake up and to find their moccasins had frozen over hard from the night's heavy snow. They run into a small tribe of the Salish where they're not able to translate for themselves, but the Shoshone boy, who had been taken captive by the tribe, is able to speak to Sacagawea. One more step and an already complex translation, plus quite literally a child is starting the translation, right? But because Sacagawea is carrying her child, she's able to convince the Salish that the explorers come in peace, and the Salish agree to swap out a few healthy horses for the worn out ones. So again, they replenish their up to 40 pack horses, plus 3 colts. And to give you an idea of how hard this was, the 3 colts are essentially there as backup food. I know we didn't talk about it much during Lewis's episode.
Here, pretty horse, here.
Yeah. So they're taking plenty of horses, but they're already thinking we need a backup plan just in case. The party leave the Salish on September 10th, and by September 14th, it has already rained, hailed, and snowed. And even worse, do you remember the name of the guide from the Shoshone?
Toby, old Toby.
Old Toby. Yeah, old Toby still got lost. That didn't change. They will now have to journey back for about 2 days, 4 days lost, in an incredibly difficult terrain where the horses are now 4 more days worn out than they would have been. Clark would write in his journal, "I have been as wet and as cold in every part of my body in my life, passing eminence, difficult knobs, stones, much failing timber, and immensely steep. Nobody is having fun." They didn't become attached to the horses because 3 weeks later, 3 days later, they already kill one because of lack of food. They were in what Patrick Gass called, quote, "the most terrible mountains I ever beheld."
Awesome.
Yeah. And for frontiersmen to say this, it's not great. I think it's very easy to say, like, to really skip over, like, yeah, they're in trouble, they have no food, but like outside of the Teton Sioux, outside of almost dying in a gully, grizzly bears, this is probably the most danger that the expedition has been in. Quite literally, it's really dire. Over a week after they left the Shoshone, their rations are completely out. It's so bad that they start resorting to eating their candles. We talked about this very briefly, but they're kind of in the same position as the Donner Party. And then they start killing more horses.
I mean, I eat wax on the regular, so it's good for you.
Yeah, it's so great. Nutritious and filling, too. I can't imagine being that hungry. To look at a candle.
Well, not only to be that hungry, but to be that cold, to be that wet, to be that worn out.
That is true.
Imagine being all those things and you're like, man, we're so close. And then your guide go, I took the wrong turn. We have to go back.
Oh, I'd kill him.
It just would suck because you're walking back like you've seen everything already too. So you're walking back like, yep, didn't have to pass that. Yep, didn't have to pass that.
Old Toby had some real severe side eye going on at him the entire time. Do you think Charbonneau was like happy? Like, finally, I'm not the biggest idiot.
Right, I'm not the screw up. I'm not the screw up. He, as soon as old Toby said they went the wrong way, Charbonneau was just like, sorry, guys. Wait, what? It's not me?
Oh, thank God. Then he starts like, hey, guys, do you remember the good times when I almost just flipped the boat? Wasn't that funny? We can joke about that now, right? Everything's forgiven.
Man, they went through some extreme stuff like on the river. It was all those mosquitoes and bugs and all that. And then now it's extreme cold and wet. Ugh.
And here's Sacagawea with a months-old child.
Right? Oh, she went through some things. That baby, man, he had some, I mean, he'll never know, but like you never would remember it. But his first year or two of life was really something.
Well, an expedition.
He did more things that a lot of us haven't done in 30 plus years.
Right. And you got to think Lewis. So we just passed the part where he negotiated for the horses. That's when Lewis wrote the journal entry, like, what have I done in my life? Well, I guess compared to John Baptiste beats us all.
Right.
The first year of his life.
He's like 6 years old in school. Oh, what have you done? Well, let me tell you.
Just mapped the entire continent. So, as dire as it is, it's only a week, which still kind of blows my mind. Like, that tells you, like, it's really a buildup from the Great Falls, how miserable that is, to the end of the Bitterroot Mountains, or going into the Bitterroot Mountains. It was just it was the hardest time of the expedition. I don't think there's any question of that. But it's only a week that they're in the Bitterroot Mountains before the expedition comes out and they meet with the Nez Perce, who feed them a series of root vegetables where the men engorge themselves to the point of dysentery. With the expedition incapacitated, the Nez Perce literally negotiate on if they can just, kill the expedition and take all their goods. Luckily for them, Wachkui steps in, and they don't. After the Nez Perce decide not to kill the expedition, they completely flip their intentions, and now they're arguably the most helpful tribe to the expedition, as they're going to show them how to use fire to cut out canoes. They're going to send scouts ahead to let people know that you can trust these men that are coming through. Generally, really helpful when they were quite literally going to kill them a couple hours before. With the help of the Nez Perce and Sacagawea's presence, the Corp of Discovery have a rapid and uneventful journey really through the Pacific Northwest. Clark would write of Sacagawea, quote, a woman with a party of men is a token of peace, and gives her credit for most of the good relations. As they are now jumping on the Columbia River, and for the first time, they are now have the current at their backs.
They flew.
It had to have felt like flying. Really, they were only going like 30 miles a day, but that had to feel like you were flowing.
I mean, from going 7 to 10 miles a day, they were like,
right. I don't know how many seatbelts there were in the canoe, but they had to fasten them.
Slow down, sir, slow down.
6 days after breaching on the Columbia, they meet a band of Snake Indians near the present day. I think it's just Pasco, Washington. I'm sorry if I butchered that, if anyone's listening from there, but they got to there. They're in Washington State. The expedition is now encouraged as they start to find goods, like trade goods from tribes. Some of those goods are now starting to include copper, which means European traders have been here before. Even more, this is just funny, even more of a, proof that they're dealing with Europeans, the tribes show them how well they know English by saying things like son of a bitch. They literally start cursing at them. Cursing aside, the impatient men now are taking risks that they wouldn't normally take the year before. The waters are incredibly rough, and in these cutout canoes, they're just going down rafts that they have no business going down to the point where tribes are lining out miles ahead. They're going to the banks of the river ready to just pick up any type of overflow. So when the canoes did capsize, that they would just pick up any of the trade goods, which had to be really bittersweet for them when they actually see the men made it down the river, but also they couldn't just pick up their stuff and walk away. Meanwhile, again, if we haven't mentioned it, Sacagawea still has a baby on her back who has to also endure as these men are going down these rapids at times that they probably shouldn't have. By November 2nd, in Washington State, they are now officially on map territory again. They travel a couple more days, making now 30 miles a day, when Clark writes on November 5th that they are now seen in the same area as white traders. The weather isn't all that cooperative, but they're getting close. On November 7th, William Clark finally wrote in his journal, "Ocean in view. Oh, the joy." Now, still premature, but honestly, they did
I'd be
it.
breathing a sigh of relief.
Oh, I'm sure they were. Because this is the part in Clark's journal. It's just kind of funny because you just get this sense that they all just take a deep breath because Clark says ocean in view, oh, the joy. For like the next couple of pages of the journal, Clark just gets a case of the O's, like, oh, isn't this great? Oh, this is a great feeling. Like he really has that phrase stuck in his head. It's actually
He just
kind of
wakes up every
endearing.
morning. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day.
I love that idea.
He puts out his finger and a little bird flies on it. Good morning, little bird.
A singing William Clark makes me so happy. Oh, that happened. Everyone write that down in your history books. That happened. Clark was now just singing everywhere he went. Now, again, it was a bit premature. They actually had to go about 30 miles because they're really just in a gigantic bay. But they traveled in 30 miles the next day and they reached the ocean. But for whatever reason, they don't take Sacagawea to go see the official ocean. And you got to think she was probably a little bit bitter about it.
Really? She goes on this whole journey and then they're like, no, 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 not for you.
Nope, boys only. Can't do it. Now, to defend them, getting to the actual beach of the Pacific Ocean is real tough. This isn't like in Almost Heroes when Chris Farley rides an eagle down and splashes in the ocean. There's really steep ridges, really tough terrain. So you can see why they wouldn't want to take Sacagawea and, again, their very young son. On the other hand, why does this suddenly matter now?
Now it becomes too dangerous.
Now, in which case, I don't know if Sacagawea rolled her eyes, but I bet she did this day. Now this is where you're making this decision? Oh, okay, great. Now it's too dangerous. Not the rapids that you nearly killed me on, not the grizzly bears, not my idiot husband trying to drown me twice in a
Not
river.
the gully.
Not the gully. Now this.
Not bleeding me.
Steep, yeah. You MFers almost killing me, but this. Steep hills. Yeah, so dangerous. Yeah. Okay, thank you. I'd be furious. So anyway, only like a few men end up going to the beach that day. The rest just kind of hang out thinking that we're close enough. Now, you will remember that the weather wasn't particularly great. Now, it's not cold like it was the winter before at Fort Mandan, but it's just wet. Everything is wet. The wood, their clothes, to the point where their clothes are even molding, and just destroying themselves. On November 22nd, it was written that the wind increased to a storm, blew with violence, throwing the water in the river with immense waves out of its banks, almost overwhelming the water. Oh, how horrible it is this day. Take a guess who wrote that.
Oh.
Do you want to sing it? Do you?
I'm good this time.
So now this is where they need to decide where they need to stay for the winter. There's 3 decisions. They can stay with the nearby Clatsop Indians. They can cross the river with they can cross the river to the south side where they can collect salt, better view of the ocean so they can see a steamship, or not a steamship. Those don't exist for a while yet. Whoopsie. They can see a trading vessel, or they can go up the Pacific. They can go up the Columbia for a bit. Really, to me, there's only one decision. Of course, you're going to go to the place where you can see the trading ship because they're broke at this point. They really need a trading vessel. And remember, that's also plan B or plan A to get the journals back to Jefferson, as they would send them on a trading vessel. So they take this wonderful vote that I am not particularly high on, but it's fine. They all vote on where they're going to stay. Where York, Sacagawea, everyone gets a vote, and they vote to stay on the south side of the bank where they're going to see the trading vessel. I ruined that moment again for everyone. I'm very, very sorry. While they build their winter quarters, the captains begin finalizing the map that they just created that for the first time will connect the Pacific Ocean to St. Louis, Missouri. That's what the captains are working on. The men, well, outside of building, they need to hunt. And what they can find is elk. And elk. And when they can't find elk, they find elk. That's all they eat for weeks at a time. To the point where they even, they kill a horse because they're sick of elk, but then they also start eating dog.
Jeez. They're that sick of elk?
They're that sick of elk, which, considering how bad it was in the Bitterroot Mountains, I don't feel that terrible. I understand wanting to have some variety in their diet. And Sacagawea is able to find some roots here and there to do that, but come on. Like, do we need to be killing dogs? Like, is that what we need to do? Now, semen's fine. They're not going to eat semen.
Right. Too salty.
Oh. Why did you have to phrase it like that?
You know why.
I don't know why. Do you want to explain?
So
Not in detail.
Yeah.
We're going to have to put an explicit on this episode if we do. So they're so desperate for something else that they get really excited when they hear that a whale washes up on a beach.
Woo, whale, yum.
This whale wasn't new. Because they're obviously like 30 miles from it. So they have to go and get it. So they get all excited to go get to this whale. So they actually take a vote on who would like to come with. And Sacagawea probably like really raising her hand, like, I'm going this time. I don't care what you say. I'm going to see the ocean. You MFers are going to take me. And they do. And after about a day or so of journey, they get to the beach, only to find the whale was pretty well stripped of everything.
Right.
A native tribe, I believe, called the Telehook. Is that what they were? I didn't write them down. I think they were the Telehook. Tillamook. That's what it was. The Tillamook tribe had basically stripped the carcass of everything. But Sacagawea got to see the ocean. Then they found the natives, they traded, they got some blubber, they got some stuff. And
they got some stuff.
That really kind of is that's the highlight of the winter. A lot of eating elk, a lot of map making. Yeah. There really wasn't much to report at Fort Clatsop, which is what they ended up calling their winter quarters. Other than they tried to not eat elk as much as possible, they also failed to see a trading vessel to send the journals home in advance. The tone in the expedition, however, is not different. They're just now incredibly homesick. They had been on the road or on the river. They've been traveling for 2 years. Anything they can do to get home faster, they're going to do. Only now they're going to be increasingly more annoyed by tribes and their asking prices. Not only asking prices as far as bartering, because remember that the Corp of Discovery, Lewis described that they had enough for 2 handkerchiefs worth. Like, really nothing to trade. So not having that trading vessel really does hurt them. But the tribes are also continuously stealing from them. We talked in Lewis's episode, but when semen is taken from Lewis, he is ready to burn down a village. When he returns from getting his dog back, he finds out that they had stolen an axe. Where if Lewis would have found the natives that stole the axe, he would have put them to death. Completely different vibe on the way back. Tone shift aside, the expedition takes off from Fort Clatsop in about April 1806, and by June 1806, they reached the Nez Perce, where, again, if you remember from Lewis's episode, they stashed a lot of supplies, but more importantly, the horses that they would need on the journey back. They reach back to the Nez Perce, who very annoyingly tell them that there's too much snow in the mountains and they're not going to be able to cross for 3 weeks. During that time, the captains try to push up once or twice, realize that the Nez Perce are not lying to them, that they not are going to be able to pass, and then they come back. They then, while they're waiting, decide that they're going to split up for really a big chunk of the journey back. Clark takes the Yellowstone River, basically back to the mouth of the Knife River. Lewis goes up, and that's when he starts talking with the Blackfeet. He's almost attacked. We're at that point of the journey. Sacagawea and Charbonneau end up traveling back with Clark.
I would assume so, since Lewis hated his guts.
I think it was a pretty easy decision. On July 18th, near White Beaver Creek in south central Montana, Charbonneau galloped off to pursue buffalo when his horse stepped on a badger hole, and Charbonneau flew over head over heels his horse, bruising his hip, shoulder, and his face, which I bet was real funny. There's really no reason for me to add that other than I think it would be really funny to see him very bruised up. I think it would just be funny. Later that day, Private George Gibson fell from his steed, causing a pretty severe 2-inch gash into his thigh. So while that really matters is that they just decide to alter courses and they're now just going to basically use canoes for the rest of the journey. There's no more risk taking. After Charbonneau goes head over heels and now Gibson hurts himself, they're just going to take the Yellowstone River for the most part. As they continue down the Yellowstone River, it's really not as eventful as Lewis's branch, which makes you think like Lewis was either a magnet for really awesome stories, or Clark was just more of like the even keel. He just maybe didn't write as much of those details down, but not much happens on Clark's leg when they split up, except Clark ends up finding what is now called Pompey's Tower. And why that's important is because Clark goes inside this very tall plateau, and he actually writes his name, W. Clark, July 25th, 1806. He carves that into stone. Now, we talked about in Lewis's episode that they had written something like that similar on the Pacific into a tree. Well, obviously, trees are going to grow, and that's going to erase. Clark writing this in stone means it is the only physical inscription that still survives from the Corp of Discovery. And all it says is W. Clark, July 25th, 1806.
As far as I'm concerned, he's the only one that went on the journey.
If only.
Right.
I would like to think underneath in really tiny, like he brought out the little chisel and he just said, "It was just me." Why is it named Pompey's Tower? Don't mind that. It was just me. So yeah, you can go visit that today. It's the actual inscription is protected by bulletproof glass. Yeah, go visit it. I haven't seen it myself. Seems kind of cool. I do want to go see it, but there you go. There's your proof that the whole thing actually happened in case you were some type of weird conspiracy theorist that needed that. After Clark leaves his inscription onto Pompey's Tower, Lewis and Clark meet back up on August 12th near the Yellowstone, where the Yellowstone meets the Knife River. And about 2 days later, they actually return to the Mandan villages. As far as Sacagawea and Charbonneau are concerned, the journey's over because they are quite literally, they are home. They pay Charbonneau $500. They then pay him for his horse, a teepee, and then his services. Clark then has an offer to Charbonneau to actually start his new life in the States, where Charbonneau said he, quote, had no acquaintance or prospects of making a living below, but would continue to live his way as he had done. They're really not that interested, in which case, fair enough, because Charbonneau had never really been to St. Louis. He had been living in the wilderness for most of his life. Sacagawea, absolute same thing, only her entire life. What is she going to do in the United States? But Clark is going to reserve some land for him that Charbonneau is eventually going to claim. Then the conversation switched to Jean Baptiste, who is now 19 months old, who has not been weaned. But Clark really kind of fell in love with this little boy to the point where Clark offers to take Pomp to raise him as his own child, to give him the education, to give him everything of an American citizen, which honestly, pretty good opportunity. Now, they're going to decline for now, but eventually they are going to send Jean Baptiste to get that education. But for now, they're going to hold on to the young boy. In Lewis's final examination, he wrote that Charbonneau was, quote, no man of particular merit from one moment of our departure from the Mandans on August 7th, 1805, until our return to this place of August last. It's awfully cold, isn't it? You have Clark, who was like, I love you guys. I will watch your child. I will adopt him. And then you have Lewis. He is worth nothing. He is nothing to me.
You are nothing. I mean, he hated him.
He did not like him at all, which I don't know where I stand on that. We can talk about that in just a couple minutes. But then you also have people like George Drouillard, who would wrote something very different on Charbonneau. Drouillard, again, the one who kind of shaved Charbonneau the first time the boat flipped over, he described Charbonneau as, quote, a man of much merit. He had been particularly useful from his knowledge and common language of justice collateral upon his uncommon skill as a hunter-woodsman. Through several duties he performed in good faith, and was in order he deserved the highest commendation. So Charbonneau is somewhere between an absolute moron and really, really good. Also keep in mind, the source I used, I don't want to say he was a Charbonneau fanboy.
But he was a Charbonneau fanboy.
But he was kind of a Charbonneau fanboy. So Drouillard did say this. This is legitimately sourced. but I just don't see it. I don't know. Maybe. As the expedition goes back, Charbonneau and Sacagawea stay in the Mandan villages. And the reason I'm saying that probably for the third time is because nothing else is really written about them until 1809. They bring John Baptiste to be baptized in St. Louis. And then they leave John Baptiste to be cared for Clark. They then head back up the Missouri River to live near the Mandans, where the couple gives birth to a daughter named Lizette. A woman only identified as Charbonneau's wife, but is believed to be Sacagawea, then dies 3 years later.
Dang, I didn't see that coming.
Real quick.
So she was 15, 22, 23?
She was about 25 years old. She died supposedly at Fort Manuel in modern-day Millbridge, South Dakota. It's said that someone died. Again, they just said Charbonneau's wife. Now, if you remember,
He had 2 wives.
he had 2 wives, but they didn't say which wife it was. It is believed it was Sacagawea, but she died of a putrid fever on December 20th and was described as, quote, a good woman, the best in the fort, and was 25 years old. However, quite easily, many people don't buy it. They believe it was the other wife. So depending on who you want to believe, Sacagawea either died at 25 or she ended up living among the Comanches with another family and then the Shoshones and then died in Wyoming in 1884.
A little older. A little bit older.
Just 80-something years old.
We'll never know.
Really close. You really won't. I think
what
she
happened
died
to
at
John
25.
Baptiste? Or will we get that into Clark's episode?
I do have some of that in Clark's episode, but there's really not much. John Baptiste ended up being kind of an explorer. If you go with the second version, he actually outlived John Baptiste for a while. He ends up being, I believe, I'm trying to remember back. I also lost the copy of my source too, so the source that I've been hammering this whole time, I can't find that. That's about the only thing written on John Baptiste. If I remember right, he became a trader, kind of followed in his father's footsteps, and I believed he died around, I believe the Shoshones, so around the Pacific Northwest.
And you said Clark outlived him?
No, Clark. No, no, they believe, if you believe Sacagawea didn't die at 25.
Then she outlived her son.
John Baptiste.
Gotcha.
But in all likelihood, I think she just died at 25 years old. So quite literally, this is what she accomplished. So real sudden ending to the episode, isn't it?
Yeah.
And now we must rank her. First round, are you satisfied? This is our biography round. We're going to be handing out negative 10 points apiece to positive 10 points apiece, depending on how well we liked your story.
So I'm gonna start by my score. I'm gonna say 6 because A, not a lot's known about her early life. B, her story is mainly the Corp of Discovery, that whole journey. That's why she's known. That's like what her significance to American history is. And then C, unfortunately, she had a very early death. So like she lived in this very, very short window that we can't really, unfortunately, I think because of how like her life started, where she got captured and then sold and everything, she wasn't really able to live this like adventurous life. And her husband was the absolute worst. So I'm in Lewis's camp. Be gone, you. Shoo. So I think that if it weren't for the Corp of Discovery, we wouldn't even know who she was. And they would have lived in North Dakota or whatever, and life would have happened.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's fair. That's actually higher than what I was going to go. And mainly because now I love the Core Discovery. Both gave Meriwether Lewis a 10. So why aren't we giving Sacagawea a 10? Because I would argue that making a map and then being in charge of 30 men, that's very impressive. But to be in charge of an infant, which is honestly, that's where all our points are going to come from, to do all of that, but with a child, is incredibly impressive.
And it's like this. Another thing, maybe why I didn't enjoy it as much. We saw another side to the story. I mean, we saw another perspective of the story, but it just wasn't. It didn't have the same, I guess, power behind it. Like you said, though, I mean, it's crazy that she even she had to, but why would you bring an infant on this like dangerous adventures beyond me? Like that just proves that her dad or Charbonneau is an absolute trash can. I mean, I get it. It was worth a lot of money. Like they made what, $500, I think, at the end.
Yeah.
Was that worth a 2-year journey though? You get paid $250 a year. She got nothing.
Yeah, that's just it. I was gonna say I was gonna say two things. One, I guess it was only a year for her, which doesn't matter. And then two, yeah, she didn't get any of that money, did she? What I will say though, you've heard Sacagawea a hell of a lot more than you've heard of Charbonneau, which is great.
Yep. Which is great. I mean, like you said, they had a gold dollar coin. My dad used to collect them, like not collect them, but like to like quote unquote save. You know, he'd go to the bank every week and get like $20 in Sacagawea coins because in America you don't have much change. No one likes carrying change around, so that's why it was easier to like have a quote unquote piggy bank of dollar coins.
Sacagawea coins.
Right.
You still see one of those once in a while.
I wonder. Let me Google quick when they stop making them.
Yeah, because for sure they're still in circulation, but I doubt they're minting them anymore.
They stopped making them in. It says not minted for general circulation between 2002 to 2008, and again from 2012 onward. So they stopped making them in 2002, started back up in 2008, and then stopped again in 2012. Yeah.
Which, when you think of it, we don't know what she looks like, so that's just.
I mean, the coin is very generic. It's a very generic photo.
Right.
So, but I will say the baby's on her back.
Yep.
Baptiste.
Jean-Baptiste. He's right there.
Cool.
So as far as the score, I'm going to go 4. I would argue the feat is just as impressive. It's just, I don't know why I'm so sour on it. Probably because it's Jean-Baptiste. Or maybe because there's parts of her story that make me feel real icky.
Yep.
None of it her fault. But
no.
I can see if people are upset over that score. That's fine. Tell me I'm wrong. Yeah, just be nice about it. Don't. It's an arbitrary number, but yeah. That brings her overall score for Are You Satisfied to 10. Next round, be sure you are right, then go ahead. This is our morality round. We're going to give a handout between negative 10 points apiece and positive 10 points apiece, depending on if, well, we thought she was a good person.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, but what evidence is
there's nothing that says she was a bad person, but she could have been. I mean, we don't know.
I think I almost want to twist this. Maybe I could do it with the next round. I almost want, because personal bravery, right up there. She seemed very calm, cool, collected. I don't think that has anything to do with morality, so maybe this just isn't her round, and I'm trying to ramble to fill up the space. But
I'm gonna do I mean, I think she was. I mean, she helped save, the journals and the boat and whatnot have you. But
Is that morality, though? I think we're thinking of the next round. I think we jumped around.
okay. So as far as like, was she moral? I'm gonna do like a 3, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I put down a 2. I'm sure she was great. There's just really nothing that's known about her. Like, there's not that
There's
much
no
to know,
stories that say one way or the other.
right? So,
Like, well, I don't know though. We should lower it because she did conspire with Lewis to kill her husband.
that's right. That has been definitively made. However, it was Charbonneau, so maybe we give her more points because
Right. Wait, actually, yeah, we got to raise the points. Yeah.
All right. I put down a 2 before you even said yours. So overall score of 5. Next round, to hell with the consequences. This is our crazy or clever round. We're going to be handing out negative 10 points apiece to positive 10 points apiece, depending if we thought she was crazy or more clever.
Again, I'm gonna say like a 3.
Yeah.
Because I mean, she had the sense, the wherewithal to like not to stay calm and cool in like really crappy situations.
Right. And I also wonder, like, is it a lot of what she's more of a symbol on the expedition more than she is person, if that makes, I know that sounds harsh, but hear me out. If because she is a woman with a child, does that make her personal, crazy, or clever? It doesn't. It just means she was the perfect symbol of the time. So the score may not reflect what her actual importance was because she's absolute key for that middle portion of the journey, which was the most dangerous point. I just don't think any of our rounds reflect that.
Right.
Other than maybe, are you satisfied? So
Right.
I don't think there's anything we go if she was crazy or clever. I just don't know if this is the right scoring rounds for her. So I'm gonna stick with my 2, which will give her with your 3 another 5. So going into draw. First, we're going to lock her score. She is at positive 20 points. If she had been at negative 20 points, we would continue to subtract points from here on out. But because she's positive, we're going to continue to add. Next round is draw. How screwed are we if we got into a duel with Sacagawea?
0. I just don't think we would. I mean, she's my child.
I'm going to go 0.5. I'm going to go 0.5 just because she had to be mentally tough. So if she's mentally tough, she might be able to, I don't know.
Could be.
Yeah, that's all I really have, though. She's not really, obviously not intimidating, so no reason to give her a high score here. Next round. Actually, this might be her round. Legacy. How well known is Sacagawea from 0 to 10?
I'm going to say like an 8. I think she was. I think she is. I mean, we just looked up her coin quite a bit.
Right.
Anyone born from, anyone around in, 99 to 2012 should have at least seen a coin.
What I will say,
she's talked about always with.
There is no Sitting Bull coin.
Right.
So if we're just going strict name recognition, is Sacagawea up there with Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse?
I think so.
I'm thinking.
I think if you ask someone who Sacagawea is, they would say, "Yeah, of course."
Actually, we have. This is going to be a very impromptu message because.
Calling your wife right now.
No. Lucy from Tudoriferous has volunteered to be this person for us. So Lucy, if you are not aware, actually it's midnight there. I'm going to ask her later. We're going to give you an update. But Lucy has volunteered to be the default do I know this person Because apparently we bring up Britain quite a bit. So I'm going to message her later. Maybe we'll just on the next episode. We'll just say if Lucy.
Okay, so hold on.
Lucy recognizes her.
Let's just put this round on pause for right now.
Let's see if she's up. Because we're recording at like 6:40 p.m., which means in Britain,
it's got to be like
it's
way later, isn't it? No, it's way later, isn't it?
5 hours.
11:40. She might still be up. Do you need to know how to spell the name?
You know me so well. No. So I've sent the message. Probably not going to get done before we get done recording. Actually, when she responds, let's just add it to the end of the episode. Why not?
Okay. Yeah.
So we'll see what she says. But if she responds in the time that we are recording, we'll let everyone know. So anyway, you give her a good score of 8. I think that's fine. What are some others? So do you think Red Cloud? Do you think she's more well-known than Red Cloud?
I do.
What did we give Red Cloud? You gave Red Cloud a 4. I gave him a 7. I do think Sacagawea is more well-known than Red Cloud. So by that, I'm going to go 7.5, which is actually higher than what I was going to give. Because
I just asked my work group chat if anyone knew who Red Cloud was.
Red Cloud or Sacagawea?
I'm going to say Red Cloud because if they say no, I know for a fact at least one of them knows who Sacagawea is.
All right. Fair enough. All right. While we're waiting for those answers, right now her score sits at 15.5. Can be updated, though. Next round, death bonus. Does she have a cool death story? And there's some mystery. There's some tantalizing things, but
no.
If we're really feeling generous, we go 0.5 because there's a mystery.
There's some mystery behind, who was it? Calamity Jane, was it? Or there was another figure we did where they could or
all
couldn't.
of them.
Right.
Like literally.
Oh, yeah. Right. Billy the Kid.
Well,
Jesse James died.
Yeah, there's still those rumors though. If you're popular, there's likely a death conspiracy because even like Wild Bill,
Elvis, Tupac, Biggie, like, and if you're popular, you're not dead when you die.
I think this is the first time Calamity Jane, Billy the Kid, and then Tupac have ever been mentioned in the same breath. I don't think we would do it. I think it's worth half of a point between us. So if you're going to go 0, I will go half a point because there is some mystery on if she lived, but honestly, there's not much to go on, is there?
Not at all.
So you're going 0. Do you disagree with the 0.5? Because you can sway me.
It's fine. The mystery is okay. I get what you're saying with the mystery, and it really is. This is the first one I think that it's like not definitive for 100%.
A legitimate coin flip, like
right? Yeah,
this one might have happened.
He had 2 wives. He had 2 wives.
He did. There's an argument. Billy the Kid, he's just dead. I mean, yes, you know, it's great. I saw Old Henry. It's a good movie, but Billy the Kid was dead. Have you seen Old Henry?
I have not.
It's pretty
good. Actually, never even heard of it.
It was a Western, came out a couple years ago. Pretty good. You should watch it. I just kind of blew what it was about, but honestly, you know,
Old Henry is Billy the Kid. Spoiler alert.
Yep. Yeah, it's fine. Everyone who's watching this has probably seen it. If not, go see it. It's good. It's worth watching. Next round, counting coup. Confirmed ish kills and divided by 10. And there's just nothing. That's one thing. 0. So that brings Sacagawea's score to 36.5.
36.5.
Which isn't the best score. It's probably one of our lowest, but when you're considering she was 15 to 18 years old, it's a lot higher than I'd do at 15 or 18 years old.
Right.
So now we need to draft her.
As you all know, Eric's going to flip a coin. The winner of the coin toss will get to choose if they draft Sacagawea into their team. Both teams, Eric and I have, are 20 people. We each currently have 10 apiece right now. Actually, Eric has 11 because he got Lewis.
Yeah, I did.
Dang it. But at the end, we're gonna go my team versus his team, head to head, bracket style. The rest of the figures will go into a free agent pool where we can drop and add up until the tournament. Eric, flip that coin. Heads. Tails.
I'm going to draft her,
Okay.
but I don't think she's going to be on a team at the end.
I was gonna say if I won the coin toss, I was gonna say I'm passing. Or if you were gonna pass, I was gonna pick her up, but say as soon as our teams are filled, she will probably be the numero uno to be dropped.
Yeah, which isn't a reflection on her. She
No.
did the journey. We loved Lewis, but yeah. I could see her playing a spoiler to someone.
Right.
And would you would have to pick. So like, let's just pretend Tenskwatawa has a chance on your team. If I would match up Sacagawea and Tenskwatawa, that's a fair fight in my eyes, or that's the fairest fight I can pick her out for her. I don't know. It sounds like we're being harsh on her, or we're not. It's just,
I mean, it's just her. She didn't have a lot of time. She was only on the earth for 25 years.
And there's only and we said it a lot, but like, there's only so many ways you can say she was a teenager with a child and went on an incredibly dangerous journey over the course of a year. Anyway, I think that's all we have on Sacagawea. I was going to do just a small update. I don't think this will matter anything podcast related, but you will notice the website hasn't been updated in a couple of weeks. Well, there's a good reason for that. Eric has been a busy boy over the course of July when he thought he would have a lot more time. Turns out my August is also going to be pretty busy because I'm also transferring jobs. Same company, just a little bit shorter commute for me. Yes, we did it. So, I might not update the episodes. I'm going to try to get stuff updated as I can. Just know, I have to push the website to the background for a bit just so we can keep episodes going out. I still also want to research and do all that other stuff. So, yeah, that's all I have.
Remember, if you like what you heard today, go ahead and like and subscribe. Leave us a comment on whatever podcast service you are listening on. We really appreciate it. And you can always check out our website, ranking76.wordpress.com, where you will find a link to all of our social media, our email. You can see the scorecards. You can check out the other episodes you may have missed. We really appreciate it. And until next time.
I'm Eric.
And I'm Matt. Hasta luego.
Are you just going to say no in a different language every time?
A baby.